Welcome everyone to the Oakland Greens May virtual town hall series, and I want to welcome all of our regular cast of characters and not so new but additional faces as well. So what we're talking about today and what I'd like to start us off with is about how to support the next generation of social justice youth that will hopefully become producers of their political process as opposed to just consumers of it. If you notice also, I changed the name of this event to How Do We Best Support? At first I did motivate, and I realized that was coming from an emotional place of just frustration. In actuality, there are tens of thousands of youth, millions of youth around globally who are already active and actually still just really need support. One of the things when have been talking about candidates within the Oakland Greens is that trying to find people to actually run, they may be of good mind, though they are doing okay in the system, at least the people that I personally have been approaching. And one of the things, I think if you're too comfortable, people don't do it. Abby Hoffman's wife said it as well. I also, how I want to start it is how we're supporting what I'd like to kick it off with. It's something we've talked about within the Oakland Greens, and I keep saying that because I do want to focus on alternative political parties. I'd love to see this turn into being outreach to have people register for the Green Party. We've talked about never done it on any large scale, is going to Laney, Merritt, or colleges and like sitting out in youth, even possibly at high schools. And do people that hear that think that that is something that is a way that we could support and be out there trying to and asking to listen to what the kids need and how we can help that? Is that tabling and outreach in that way? Is that something that people would support? Anyone can go first. You can unmute yourselves. I don't think we need to mute on anything. There's only 6 of us, although there are more tickets that had sold at the last minute. Michael, did you have a thought?
I did, actually. I think that we should do that, but it can't be us. It can't be me. Let's put it that way. I'm too old. That is, it can't be. It has to be other young people who have already come to the conclusions that we have to go and get others, and that's what's missing, in my opinion. What we need is 5 or 10 or some small, I think, doable number, but we have to do it, of people to actually begin this process. It cannot be people over 50 or even over 40, frankly. So that's my thought.
Maybe that is instead of, because it really, I don't actually, Aiden hasn't contacted me, so I don't know whether it actually did work for him or not. Rather than posting it on social media and our websites, actually having him out there, tabling him and Justin and such might be a better way to go. Anyone else on that particular one, or else what other ways? But I actually, let me also piggyback. I also agree with that. I think I'm too fucking old. The only reason that I get away with it, I think, is because I curse a lot. I really do. That my conversation is more familiar than formal. And I've never, even when I educated, I always gave it to my kids straight. Even if it came to the point of like, oh, well, you know what? I don't know if I can actually discuss that topic with you. I don't think we're on that level, but you should ask your parents. So I was always very straight with my kids, and they seem to always get it, right? I mean, at least, again, probably one of my best things is that 85 kids that went through my programs are not dead, addicted, or, fucking up in that way, so are able to have some sort of navigation of this corrupt system that is going to be put in front of them. But again, so any other thoughts on that? If not, what do the other 5 people think four people think is the best way to support, motivate to the ones that are not. Okay, what do we do?
Let's see. Oh,
Alice? Yeah, please, go ahead.
yeah, well, we're having the same issues in Seattle trying to get more younger people involved. We have a younger group in south of Seattle at South Puget Sound, and they kind of do a lot of social things, and they're younger people reaching out to younger people. So I also feel like too old to really reach out to younger folks. I am very open to talking to them, you know, once they're sort of engaged. But we finally are starting to have some younger people kind of step into the Green Party. And now what we're focusing on is trying to kind of onboard them and make them feel welcome and have some kind of process to keep them. Because historically, what we have is people will kind of like dabble a little bit and be introduced to things through, you know, through the Seattle Green Party, or and then they'll go to socialist alternative Shama Sawant's party because that's a lot more attractive to them, or they're sort of Bernie Kratz and they'll go to the DSA, and you know, or they'll just go right to whatever issue group they're interested in, like 350 Seattle. So we do have like two younger people now that are going to do some more outreach towards UW and more and Sunrise. But the Sunrise group, it's a young group of ecologically minded people, but they're pretty much in the Biden let's drill Alaska kind of ecology. So like trying to like bring them in and then gently tell them, you know, really this isn't really real. I don't know. I don't have any good ideas. I'm just listening. I'm eavesdropping on you guys to see what ideas you have.
Marina, do you have a thought? And then Orlando?
Okay.
Well, I wanted to say that I think my son, who's now 23, so I have some access to someone who's not too old. I think he would be interested in talking to you, Michael. I mean, I can understand why you personally wouldn't want to do it at this point in the pandemic, but you know, for all of us, you kind of have to start where you are, right? And so until we get some young people involved, then what about empowering stories? What about talking to people? You know, yes, you want to ask, what do you care about? What would motivate you? But also, if you just tell people, because, you know, they haven't sat face to face with someone or stood face to face with someone and heard about starting a new political party, right? Or heard about running for school board. They think that all the people who run for school board are not just old, but are much more conservative and not really the same kind of person that they are. So youth is just one aspect of the alienation, which keeps you as a youth, I think, from getting involved.
Orlando?
Well, you know, Vicente, what I do every year is some of you don't know me. I'm Orlando Johnson, been a member of the Greens for over 20 years. So what I use as my experience to the young folks, because I'm in the hip hop community also, I give them my experience of being a two-time mayor candidate, being a campaign manager, being an African-American male, being in group homes, county jail, Seaway Penitentiary, escaped the feds. So I let them know my experience of getting around a group that don't look like us, that's not white, that's not Hispanic, and let them know that I'm part of a group that we don't see color. You might have a few here, but the overall is to continue whatever policies and initiatives that we need from a local level that can help someone. So if someone is running, I got a couple people in mind that's supposed to be trying to run for city council and mayor and so forth. I have an unknown rapper, you know, named Mr. Fab that I work with and so forth.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we have a lot of things, but the general purpose, like Vicente told me when we doing this, it have to be your passion, and it's not about the money, but you can get some type of financial stability. So I had Teresa Anderson. She was one of the first persons I introduced. She ran for city at large. I had Shake and a few other people, Marcy Hodge, when it comes from Democratic. So I try to get them to understand too is we're really most focused on Greens. Nothing wrong with Democratic Party because we can support. It's a difference supporting to an endorse, but to support those that's basically on that ground. But I'm looking forward for this good election and getting a lot of good candidates to run this year.
Thank you. Well, and there is no doubt that, and I scream it to high heaven at the state meetings, that we are not very welcoming on a bunch of different levels. Some of which is why, I mean, I always treat all of these virtual like they're shows, like I would do regular professionally. So that's why you would open the house 30 minutes early. That's why 5:45. There's the promotional loop that shows, and we play music. We don't record those sessions for legal reasons, but because we don't want to fuck up anybody's money, even if they're millionaires already. But that's not true, because some of the stuff I do there, they're not. But it's also, but again, that music is all geared. It's not the normal. It's no pop music. That's for damn sure, right? That's not what you're hearing, and you're getting completely different genres. I also try to be more in people's faces too, because it's like, especially for the youth, I was like, well, it's your world, right? I'm paying rent right now. Like, we're not going to be around. Like Michael's, how this began was, if you're over 50, right? Okay, I'm in the winter, right? What are you going to do? Because it's only going to be worse. It's obviously getting worse, right? And that also goes into shout outs, trying to, for the 7 that'll watch us on our YouTube channel, for other linguistic town halls and other ones that we do every year, the words we use, right? Like, I don't like third party. I like alternative party, representation type of party, right? Proportional representation parties and things like that. So how we say things, I think, also affects that. But we haven't been welcoming. And one of the ways I thought to do that, right, is they have to make our meetings more fun. One of the ways we do that in Oakland Greens is, again, it's because we're small, and we know each other so well, our conversation can be familiar and casual, right? It's not very stoic or anything like that. And no one is afraid of profanity, and we're not afraid of calling it directly, obviously, even if it's internal, about things that we find like, oh, I don't agree with that or anything, and as well. Also, part of that is bringing words, saying navigating a corrupt system. When Orlando was talking about, that we want to try and people be able to get compensated for things that they do, whether that be campaign staff, or saying that, school board, if you get elected, that should be a full-time job, right? I don't want a school board member who had to pull a fucking 12-hour day and then has to come to a school board meeting and talk about budgets and numbers and all the shit that they had to read. The shit, and those meetings also usually go like 9-10 hours. Like, I don't, that's just a recipe for dysfunction. So I guess that's would be the next one. So what is the question to ask? Because like, how to say, look, you need to take it over. What is the question? I already heard it once, I think, from Alice, that what will it take? What would it take to motivate you? And I will say too, as a disclaimer on the recording, that all of this information, like, I take into, we've only done it once, but I think it was a success. We're doing like live monologues out in public as our outreach. And for people who don't know what that means, that standing on a stage and no microphone, right? No permits needed. Not that I'd ask for one anyway, but I don't need one. Just more like a theater production. It is unscripted. I would say improvised as well, but I mean, we do know. I do know when I give it about what points like I try to hit. And so is the question again that I put forth right now, is it what would it take or what will it take? Go ahead, anybody.
I'm just gonna say, I have 4 kids and they're all working really hard, and my youngest has just gotten more interested because they're transgender, and they're witnessing some of the stuff going on in the Green Party, and so it's kind of activating them to take more of an interest. But I think if they don't see it as relevant to them and they're scrambling, trying to like work a couple different jobs and get rent together, and it's hard for them to make the time. I think for people that are home a little bit more, or don't have little kids in the house, or or they're retired, they have more time to put into it. But I think one factor is young people just are really overworked. They're totally commodified. And, how do we push the button and tell them, you don't have to be this commodified. You're a person, not a commodity and a profit center for some other thing. It's hard to interrupt them in the flow of what they have to deal with on the day-to-day to get that message to them.
No, and no one else?
Well, I'll just say about my son. my son is a university professor at this point, but he's not home free either. I mean, he has to produce. He's judged on how many scientific papers he produces in his field, and how it is his teaching going, and he's trying to get tenure. And until he gets tenure, I mean, he's not in a much better position actually than a lot of other young people who don't have the lofty title, but are still struggling to keep their jobs. And that's, my son is struggling in a different way. I mean, the money is good. He's not struggling financially. He makes his rent every month. But on the other hand, he has to produce. He works like a dog. He works 50, 60 hours a week to combine both his teaching, his classes, and also his research. And his research, I mean, one of the things that determines his usefulness to the university is, can he bring money into the university? So he spends time writing grants proposals, and hoping he can score some additional money that through him would come to the university. It's just, there's a general problem, regardless almost of the stratum in the working class you are. You have to work harder than I had to work hard. I mean, I had a civil service job for decades, and I had no overtime. I worked 40 hours a week, and nobody bothered me after that. It's getting rarer and rarer. Over.
And now let me ask though, for all of you, do your children still vote on outside of the two-party system? So that's how they do it. That's how my son would do it too. Some struggle. And then
I like.
go ahead, Orlando, please.
I like to also add that too, and I explain this to a lot of my friends too. What a lot of them fail to realize also, it's not just the political party, it's the brilliant minds that's involved in the political party. So if you're working at a job or something and you might about to get laid off, but inside this party, you might have an attorney, you know, you might have a person that practicing discrimination. So it's also good perks just to be involved because it ties into your personal life. If you're going through sexual discrimination, you know, who can you have as a party that have people that's been through that road that won't judge you on your sexuality or your bias or your questions. So I believe we have a lot of great experts in our field in the party that can invite people and help them with mental wellness, help them with financial literacy. So I believe it's a lot of perks. And then also just to learn from a diverse group and not just your own group telling you one side of the story. So I believe it's a great perk to bring to folks to get involved. Over.
And let me go right back and shouting out all of the other virtual town halls and speaking specifically on the linguistics. I love that one so much. When you say that he has to work like a dog, I don't know, my dog works a lot too, but he's like super, super spoiled. So I think that maybe we even want to start saying that, because at least in my world, my dogs are like, animals are like treated like kings and queens, changing the script on it. But then now what I'm hearing is that it goes back to how can we just convince those people to just, when it's election time, fuck the two-party system. And this is something that Oakland Greens, we've been talking about specifically even more deep diving in for the last few months over the pandemic, is voting local. It's like, okay, I get it, right? I don't agree, I wouldn't do it, but I can get why you would vote for Biden over Trump. But also, I mean, okay, I'm not even going to get into all that stuff, because like, yeah, it's easier for you if you're a European American. I get it, right? Not for me, right? Because it's been slavery since 1492, so it hasn't really been, the two-party system really hasn't done shit for us and poor folks. But getting those people who are struggling like that, because it is true, I do think I would not be registered as a Green if I didn't think it would be the best for a more just working system, whether it be all of it, raising salaries, and with also reducing the amount of time to work, going to a 3-day work week, right? And making like even more money that you're actually able to survive. Like there is that basic standard. There's enough wealth on this fucking planet that we could raise everyone. And I also do believe that we could do it in a eco-socialist, just balance with the climate and planet. In the video that actually was all those young people, one thing I did disagree with, saying that, oh, if we don't have a planet, the planet is going to be fine. We're destroying ourselves, right? The planet has lived through a whole bunch of shit. There's no way that we are that brilliant that we would destroy this big blue marble, right? So I think that, again, back to the linguistics, take that fucking thing right out of our head, because the planet, and if anything else, the planet is destroying us. It's going, oh, you want to throw up some fucking carbon? Bitch, guess what? I got 85 volcanoes going to go off all at once on your ass. Now what? You know, I got hurricanes, right? Tropical storm. What you gonna do? Nothing. Drown is what you're gonna do. Hope you can swim, because if you can't swim, you just out of luck. Sorry, Marina, did you have something?
No, I was just waving in support, but I was going to share a sort of half-formed thought, thinking from my own background. My parents were poets, and so I grew up with the kind of poetry readings and poetry workshops where, you know, you talk in kind of a monotone way, and you generally talk about the same set of subjects that are acceptable, even if you're sort of an avant-garde poet. It's still very monotone, not just in the race of the people writing the poetry, but in the way they present themselves and what they talk about. So what I was thinking of, an analogy to get young people interested, is trying to do something as different as the experience of going to a poetry slam or a hip hop concert versus going to a poetry reading that I grew up with, where you don't raise your voice and you don't clap, right? Because showing enthusiasm, that's uncool. We all got to be quiet. So however we can change it up. And one unrelated thing I wanted to add is, you know, you might not be surprised to hear that I've asked my son this question and I've asked his girlfriend this question, and they say, oh, I don't know. I don't know. So I really do feel that same, they're overwhelmed all the time and they're overworked and they don't necessarily know the answer. So we could get out and ask youth what it would take, but they may or may not give you the answer, right? Because they're just in the same problem that we're having on the other end, right? Might have to experiment a lot and change things up and try different things and see what works.
So now I'm hearing that the monologue should be some sort of teach-in type of thing too,
Yes.
where saying exactly what we're saying here. You know why you can't even slow down to stop and have this conversation, and then list it that way. Oh, look at that, helpful. Look at that, helpful. Look at that, helpful. And bringing that one into it as well. And I think I'm trying to think if I did that in elementary school. So I mean, I was fucking crazy teaching elementary school. I mean, I used to play Sister Soldier speeches. There's one that she did called The Party Goer and the Party Thrower. And it's just super powerful about, you know, economics and how it all works out and how they suck your money and how suck money out of the poor community, which ironically, shout out to this kind of things, what's going on in our local community radio station, is the kind of the format that we're actually advocating funding yourself rather than having a few people who are giving you large sums of money, have vast amounts of people who are giving you smaller amounts. So you still get the same amount of money, but you just get it from more, and you just have to figure out the programming to do that. One of the things that has screwed up here in Oakland is that those people that give small donations, when they started taking off all of the music programs that actually identified with them, all the hip hop stuff, like all that stuff went away. And I actually have to confess that I don't understand either, because I've reached out, I've always felt that I've been told in the past too that I come across like, I'm not an English major. So when I'm writing emails and typing to people and asking them questions, I'm typing it probably as I'm talking, as if I'm talking to them and they can get the information. But I've reached out to people, either that or what I'm proposing is like too crazy of an idea for a show. Such as instead of, like, so we're doing about our local station here in the Bay Area with Tracy Rosenberg. I wanted to do also a show with Aya De Leon, and I'm probably going to still keep bugging them anyway, at least twice a year, of their book Side Chick Nation, but to put it into a perspective of how the Green Party here in Oakland is like the side chick of the political process. All those Democrats love our Green Voter Guide. They want to know what we think, but are not willing to actually break the two-party system for thinking we don't raise money or whatever the fuck they think. I can't even really fathom it. I don't understand how someone could just stay in that for so long after everything that's been happening, at least local. Anyway, again, I digress. But trying to put it to them. So I admit that I'm obviously having issues with trying to communicate to people who are even not necessarily the youth, but younger than us, and getting them to try to put forth some presentation, then that would then appeal to them. So.
What about in a post-Trump era? Oh, I'm sorry, Dale, go ahead.
You sure? Maria, you can go again if you want. We're small
After
enough.
Dale.
Okay, Dale, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay. I was going to tell you what my daughter lives in Southern California and is in the Hollywood movie industry business. I'll tell you what her argument with me is. She is a registered Democrat. She was all in for Hillary Clinton. She couldn't stand the fact that I had left the party and registered Green. We're both in California. And she just would tell me over and over again that I don't understand the fact that we don't have proportional representation. that the whole, it's wired against us. Period. So as she looks at me, the only option is, you know, to support now Bernie Sanders or someone, what do they call them? The three women in the Democratic liberals in the Democratic Party. My days, by the way, of interacting with young people, they're gone. I'm a cohort of Michael Rubin, and I understand that all I can do, the best I can do at this point, is make sure on the literature table the flyers don't, you know, blow off while you are giving your speech, or Orlando are giving your scripted speech with some swear words. I got the best I can do is to help you. I hear from my colleagues about what they hear about the young, you know, students. There's probably at least 40% at this large university where I taught that don't believe or can't imagine how things could really be different, even though they are faced now with the fight of their lives, the two-front war. They've got to deal not only with the climate change, which many, you know, deny, say it's, you know, climate's always changing, blah, blah, blah. And the big lie of Trump. And can really multicultural democracy even survive when the Republican Party is assaulting the basic voting rights? My God. And you don't have those students who are just outraged and on the street and protesting? I've digressed. Sorry.
It's okay. Marina?
Yeah, good stuff. Good digression. Somewhat on the same line. So I was thinking of what I've heard from people who are afraid to leave the Democratic Party is a lot of fear and animosity towards alternative parties because of the fear of this monster of Trumpism and whatever else you want to characterize that as. And so I have heard discussion in the past about focusing more on local races and less at the national level. And I think that's where people probably would be interested at any age, but especially young people who are kind of afraid to step out of the Democratic Party. I think they would be much more interested in seeing changes in the local school board or in the local community college or in their local city council than they would be at stepping outside of Democratic Party for a state or national election. Because they have this story that they still, you know, some of them, a lot of them believe that if you step out of line, if you get out of the Democratic Party, then you're going to let the bad guys win.
You know, I'm going to go a little, again, down the rabbit hole again and say that it is true. Someone had mentioned before, you ask a young person how, and they go, I don't know. And that's by design, right? So they're undereducating ours over and over and over again. And it has gotten even worse. You know, Dale, you mentioned about taking away voting rights and then making it stack so far against any other alternative party. That's actually growing across the country. Michael mentioned it back before, how in some states they were blocking and attempting to block all the lawsuits that were happening around the country, the last election and stuff. Which even that too is one, again, where I say I'm going to go down the rabbit hole where I just want to like slap the whole thing in the face. Because, so your idea is, oh, sorry, hold on, I got way more people coming in, that we're completely insignificant. And yet you're putting all of this effort and rigging it so much that alternative parties can't get in. So which is it? Are we a threat or are we not? Because it seems like we are. And anything that we are even saying, trying to reach out to young people the two-party system is completely afraid of, right? And it hasn't worked when I talk about other reasons. Remember, the one that we used to use was that, oh, well, these big corporations and wealthy people would not donate to both if there was any fucking difference, right? If there was a real significant difference between the Republican or the Democratic Party, they wouldn't give to both. So, but yet they do. So that is, again, and I do sometimes, depending on my mood, that is the tone the monologue takes. It's like, oh, they're undereducating you and you're letting them. You're just letting them. Fuck you. There's all this shit going on, and you can just go down the list, whether it be police killing of poor and disproportionately people of color, to toxic masculinity where motherfuckers is getting away with rape and no one doing shit, right? Like, ain't nobody dead, really? Well, I don't know. In my family, rape someone in my fucking family. And I am not saying this personally. I would never say that, definitely not while recording. But I do know that I have family members that would take that shit pretty personally and take it into their own hands. So again, so sometimes it does take that tone with me when we're even talking to youth or trying to have a monologue with people that, you know, if I'm having an angry day, if it has that tone, then maybe all of it is work. So I think we are going to end up trying to table at places and even monologue at places especially once we open back up again. On campuses or right off of campus on the public sidewalk. Luckily, like I don't need a bullhorn or anything. So
just want to throw out, when you're talking about tabling, what about, instead of talking to people and saying, you know, what is it going to take? This didn't do it, that didn't do it. But what about asking them a more specific question that might draw them in to answer and maybe join the conversation? Like, well, would you be more likely to go out and join a direct action in Georgia if we organized a group of youth doing that because of the voter laws there? Or would you be more likely to join a protest here? I don't know what the right questions are, but instead of saying, what does it take to get you involved, which we agree the youth don't know either, or instead of talking to them, I think a teach-in you mentioned would be great, but also just asking them questions that might be appealing to answer, you know, start at a kind of a high level, but with some things that get people emotional. You know, use the hot button issues just like the Republicans do. But for us, it's, you know, people dying in the street under the cops' knee, and it's illegal to give water to voters in line. Those are things that are like commonly known and do get a knee-jerk reaction that maybe we can then fuel the momentum to go past the knee-jerk reaction to taking a step.
Michael.
Yeah. Am I muted? No. I wanted to respond a little bit to this question of the Democrats' attack on us. No matter how weak we are, I want to say, first of all, I don't believe it makes the slightest bit of difference whether or not we run for governor or for mayor or city councilman. Whatever we do is a threat to them, and therefore they respond in that way. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point is the question of lesser evilism has, it's true, it was dying for a while, but has come back with a roar because of Trump. That is, a lot of people say you can't use the question of lesser evilism because Trump is so terrible, and therefore we have to vote for the Democrats because otherwise Trump will win, or somebody like Trump will win. And that's a real problem for us. And the third thing I want to say is the Democrats have in the 2020 election cycle, at least a half a dozen states, the Democrats maneuvered to get the Greens off the ballot. I think people should know that. They are afraid of us, even though we seem to be insignificant in some sense. Nonetheless, they understand the potential. They're scared to death that the ordinary people who vote for the Democrats will get tired of doing that when they see that no results from electing them. I mean, look at California. California has an absolute majority of Democrats in both houses of the legislature. What have they done for the average person with their majorities in both houses? Not much to speak of. The thing that was probably the most important was the rent abatement for COVID. I mean, that to me was probably the most significant thing that they did, and a lot of it is you still owe the money, you just don't have to pay immediately, and that's a very, very small thing. That's a thin reed for most people, since most people will never be able to pay the money, even if they don't have to pay their rent immediately. Anyway, I just think that I want to continue. I think we have no choice but to continue running for all the offices, for the big offices as well as the local offices, because we need to get the fact that we exist out to the voters. And the only way we do that is by running candidates at every level. Over.
Yes, Dale, and then Greg, please.
Let me respond to Michael again with a story about not my daughter this time, but my nephews in Michigan, who really were kind of fascinated with me that I had decided to join the Green Party, and I sent them the literature and everything, and they're in college now. They're voters now. They're registered voters, and when the last election, by the way, they came out here and they were happy to see Bernie Sanders speak in San Francisco. They were really appreciated that, but he didn't get on the Democratic ballot. And by God, they were telling me, and here's what they would tell you, Michael. They would tell you the lesser evil is fascism. My God. We failed to slip into it by just inches in the last election.
Yep, I know.
And they voted for Biden.
Of course.
And I wasn't going to criticize them for that. Not in Michigan.
Well, as long as we remain in this endless trap, we're not going to get anywhere. That's the reality.
Well, if I can jump in, I think that it's it does seem to vary a bit state by state, because the Democrats have actually had several opportunities to be much tougher on third parties in California. And in fact, I think just recently they were going over the rules for ballot qualification, and they're actually considering making it easier for us to stay on the ballot, because in California, as we know, the Democrats are overwhelmingly in control, and so that they don't really see the Green Party in California as all that much a threat compared to, of course, many of the other states like Michigan. And on the other states that tried to keep our presidential candidate off the ballot. So it's really a significant difference, I think, between states that are overwhelmingly one party or the other, and the so-called swing states. If I was in a swing state, I think it's almost guaranteed that the Democrats would be doing everything they could to keep the Greens off the ballot, to make sure the Greens never exist. The same way that the Republicans in many states are trying to prevent Black and other minority voters from participating at all. Because, the parties certainly go after their own interests. But fortunately, we haven't had any really major direct attacks here in California. It's more of a matter of the general electorate is so brainwashed. I mean, so many people in California still think that, oh, you got to vote for the Democrat in order to stop Trump. But they don't realize, they don't think that they don't remember that California is so overwhelmingly Democrat that having 1 or 2 or even 3% of the Democrats vote for Greens instead, the Democrats are still going to win by 15 or 20%. So, the average voter doesn't pay attention to these things. And that's one of our biggest challenges, even in California, is people, don't think much beyond the national narrative. They watch too much TV. People in this whole country watch too much TV.
Agree with that. And also they don't ask the question, because Biden only won by 7 million votes. We didn't even have that many, but wouldn't have added, if you would have added all the Greens, you still didn't beat them by that much. And the question they should be asking is wow, we have half of our country full of Nazis. How the fuck did that happen? Right, as opposed to it. Did I see your hand as well, Alice, again? No? But yeah, I don't think that they asked that question enough. Oh, and from the chat, the Green New Deal and everything that we started that, and that I think is a specific target to try to draw Greens over to the Democratic Party. Again, how I put it, it's been pointed out to me, I put it this way, is the green and white, which would be green, and then they go back and drink their Starbucks, right? They want to read the voter guide and they want to hear what we have to say, but they're going to go ahead and vote for the Democrat because they're doing okay in this corrupt capitalist system. And they're so, like we were saying before, so overwhelmed and so drugged down just to get to take a breath and then sink down until you just can't hold it anymore, and then scramble back to the top just to grab another breath. And you do that over and over for years and years and years. That's enough to drive you fucking crazy. This came out really, really well. I'm sorry that our the other guests didn't show up, but they purchase tickets, so we'll be fine with it too. Fine with the regular cast. I always say that this is some of the for Oakland area, I think some of the most radical political minds. There's a couple of other people I'd love to see. We did see Orlando in here and stuff too. So I think that's super important. It always helps me when I'm out and trying to do what I can as far as outreaching and producing events. One thing that came out of it too, I think a possible, instead of the debate format, I was thinking maybe a poetry slam or something of that nature would be too, although I am still committed to the side chick. I think that's a great fucking show. Anyway, if anyone else have any other thoughts before we close? Seeing none, everyone, thank you again. This has been the Oakland Greens monthly virtual town hall series. Remember, for the 7 that are going to watch this on YouTube, the YouTube channel has lots of content. You can also keep up on local events, candidates, and everything else. The webpage has a lot of contents too. That's www.oaklandgreens.org, and check us out on Facebook. Instagram too is going well. And thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next month for all of our events. Peace out.
Bye-bye.